New Jersey.
There's a quorum call, I understand.
There is.
May I vitiate the quorum, please?
Without objection.
Thank you very much. Today should not be a normal day. Today should be a day of national grief and pain and horror at what happened yesterday. Yesterday in Oxford, Michigan, there was yet another school shooting. Within the span of just 5 minutes, 4 children were shot dead by a fellow student. 7 more people, 6 students and 1 teacher, were wounded. Reports are that more than 100 911 calls were made in the span of minutes. Imagine the horror, imagine the fear, imagine the terror, imagine the pleas for help on those 911 calls as students listened to gunshot after gunshot ring out, killing their fellow students. The students huddled in corners as their teachers desperately tried to lock doors, barricading them with desks, fearful of what was happening outside, some escaping through windows and sprinting and running for safety. And what should outrage every single American is that this is not unusual in our country. This was not a one-time occurrence. We know the names that should be hallowed names of pride of our children, but no, they're names that speak to horror. When we think about Parkland and what happened there, when we think about Newtown, what happened there, and so many other communities that have been ripped apart by that nightmare that happened yesterday. We live in a distraught present in America. More people have died in my lifetime from gun violence than have died in all of our American wars combined, from the Revolutionary War to the Civil War to World War I and II and Vietnam and the 20-year war on terror. More have died in gun violence in just the last 50 years. Our gun murder rate is 25 times higher than the next closer country. Not double, not triple, not quadruple, 25 times more high than the next closest country. And 90 Americans are dying every day from gun violence. Not to mention the many more, like the 7 from Oxford, Michigan, that have had their health shattered by gunshot wounds tearing through their bodies. And our kids, our American children. According to Everytown for Gun Safety, firearms are the leading cause of death for American children and teens, the #1 cause of death. We know that teens are dying at alarming rates due to gun violence and suicide rates, which are rising faster and faster than in any other group, nearing an all-time high. And so the question that I must ask today, the urgent question that we must ask, is what will be our response? We cannot keep telling our children that we will protect you, and then the only thing we are doing throughout our schools is teaching them how to hide. These drills that are now as common as fire drills, that are teaching our children that we won't stop the gun violence, but we're going to teach you how to barricade yourself in, how to hide under desks, how to shelter for cover. Someone comes through your school that should never have had a gun in the first place. I'm tired of hearing the simple utterance of thoughts and prayers, but there being no action. I'm a person of faith, and I know as it teaches that faith without works is dead. And we have seen enough death. But now, after what happened in Oxford, what will be our response? My Republican colleagues in the Senate seem content with the status quo. There doesn't seem to be an urgency to save lives, to end the nightmare, to stop the fear and terror. The continued work to block, compromise gun safety laws that the majority of Americans, including most Republican voters, including most gun owners, including most NRA members, blocking compromise laws that are supported by the majority of us Americans that would keep more guns out of the hands of people that would do our children harm. What is our response? We can pass universal background checks that are supported by 84% of voters. We can provide resources and support to help cities across America implement evidence-based gun violence intervention, proven programs that keep our children safe. We can start to heal the communities that have been shattered by gun violence by not just expressing our thoughts and prayers, but investing in their healing and their help. It is no longer acceptable to have a culture of fear of gun violence in our country. It is no longer acceptable to teach our children just to hide while we do nothing. It is not acceptable that we are normalizing gun violence in our country at rates that have never before been seen in humanity. This is not normal. It demands a response. And what will be our response? Now is the time not to surrender to fear. Now is time not to accept this as normal. Now is not the time just for thoughts and prayers. It is the time to act. It's time to lift our voices, to take more collective responsibility, to stand up to the corporate gun lobby. It's time to work tirelessly to show our children that love is a demanding, active verb. Love is sacrifice. And if we are willing to truly love our children, we won't just teach them fear. We will show them our strength. Are we going to wait? This is a cancer and it's spreading. It's being seen in cities and churches and synagogues and nightclubs, concerts. Are we going to wait? Is there such a poverty of empathy that gun violence has to visit upon us, our communities, our schools, our places of worship, our families, before we think this is an issue enough for us to stand up and fight for change? Will we wait? What will be our response? How many more times will members of this body have to come to this floor and speak to the unspeakable? Talk about children murdered in the greatest nation on the planet Earth, to know that our children's greatest threat to their lives, their top cause of death, is gun violence. I pray. I do have thoughts and prayers, not just for the victims, but for this body. And I hope more will join together, not in a do-nothing caucus, but join together to pass laws that reflect the will and the majority of the American people and end this national nightmare once and for all. This is a moment that demands a response, not business as usual. This is a moment that demands the best of who we are, not to cower in fear, but stand for change. I yield the floor, and I note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.